Good evening, Red Star Rebels. Today is October 6th, 2022. This is Season 2, podcast number 29, and we are Red Star Report. I'm Hal G. Lohr, and this is Voices for the California Nation. We just keep saying that. Voices for the California Nation. Nation state. Home of the California Independence Movement. We are Red Star Report. And when we say we mean we, the actual people of the real California independence movement. Real Californians working for a future where California takes its place as an independent country in the global community. An independent Californian nation where the values held by the majority of Californians are reflected in its own policies and laws instead of the political desires of people who live on the other side of the continent. An independent California nation that unapologetically reflects the diversity of the California people and actually works to fulfill the long-neglected American promise of all people being created equal. Which brings us to tonight's first segment. As Activism in Action with Shankar Singam brings you an interview with one of the most knowledgeable voices for the California nation you'll find anywhere. An interview with California National Party External Communications Coordinator Theo Slater. So I'm just going to stop talking at this point and say, take it away, Shankar.
This is our country, folks. This is California.
Thank you, Hal, and welcome to a special episode of Activism in Action. I have a very special guest with us tonight, my longtime friend and fellow California patriot, Mr. Theo Slater. Theo, how you doing?
I'm fantastic, Shankar. Thanks for having me on the show.
Theo is one of the main founders, one of the beginning founders in it since day one of the California independence movement, and also founder of the California National Party, the national party of California independence. Theo, how are you doing? You want to tell us a little bit more? Did I miss any of your accolades?
Thanks, Shankar. I appreciate it. I'm an attorney, so I've been running a small business since 2013. I live in Sacramento. I love it. Sacramento is a great place, but tell everyone it's a terrible place. Don't come to Sacramento. Too many people here already. So, word on the street. Nobody knows.
Right on. I will.
The bad rep is right. Nobody come to Sacramento. All right.
So this is a huge opportunity here. Nobody gets an interview with Theo. Theo does not do any interviews. I'm glad that he's with me right now doing this. So I've got a couple pertinent questions for you, my friend. Let's see what your opinions are on this, on the world and on California. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is a touchy one. This is kind of like the elephant in the room. So you have independence movements like Scotland and Catalonia, all pretty much ahead of California as far as independence. I mean, they're on the cusp of independence. But if we notice on their story, on their 20 or 30-year story on being independent, they were also accused. They were accused of being a Russian front, like Russian was funding them and part of it. Do you think that this whole Russian funding thing, Russia's backing you up, is part of the independence package? If you're going for independence, do you think this is just a rite of passage for any fledgling country that wants to become independent?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous slander. Any independence movement on the left is going to get hit with this absurd narrative. It just has to do with what will scare the liberals and the kind of inherent bigotry of the United States and some of the other imperial powers. Russia is a terrible empire. Putin is a dictator. Their war of aggression is wrong. Like, it's just, there's no good empires, right? So the U.S. empire is bad. The Russian empire is bad. All global empires are bad. And the idea that like any effort for a imagine community or any group of people to want sovereignty for themselves has anything to do with the game of empires is pretty narcissistic on the part of the empires.
This is a tag on to that question. Now that Russia's and Putin's having such a hard time, he's broke, he's got nothing. Who are they going to accuse these independence movements, including ours, of being funded by now? You think?
Probably China. That'd be my guess.
Oh yeah.
Right. Who's the next boogeyman?
Great. So speaking of like China and especially like Hong Kong and countries like Australia, like Canada, with the death of Queen Elizabeth. Now the Queen just died after 70 years in power. And you got King Charles there. And nobody really respecting King Charles much because you have Australia wanting to be sovereign. You have Canada wanting to be sovereign. Do you think these countries wanting their independence will help the California independence movement gain traction at all? Or do you think it helps or hinders?
I don't think it'll really change that much. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, these countries have been independent for quite some time. They have this nominal figurehead relationship with someone who used to be a very popular figurehead. I do think a lot of these places will become republics and will, come out from underneath the stewardship of the English monarchy. And I'm sure they'll, be part of the Commonwealth and so forth. But yeah, I don't think it'll change that much. I do think that when Scotland becomes independent, which I think will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, that will be helpful because it's a small country, much smaller than California, with an economy exponentially smaller than California. And if they can stand on their own, which they can, given their dynamic economy, their massive natural resources, they would be much more prosperous out from under the boot of London than they are under it. And I think that when Californians see a modern, free, independent, left-leaning, forward-looking Scotland as a beacon of hope and freedom for the world, I think that will be an inspiring example for Californians. I also think if the Catalans beat them to it, I think that would be an inspiring example too, because the Catalans are kind of like the California of Spain. So,
and I was going to touch on that. I mean, look at what happened to the Catalans. I mean, they got it. The Spanish prime minister said, "Yes, here you go," and then of course the EU stepped in, or somebody stepped in and said, and what happened? A massacre, pretty much.
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened was, the difference between the Scottish referendum and the referendum in Catalonia was that the Scottish one was legal under UK law, and the Catalan referendum was not legal under Spanish law. So that triggered a lot of repression, suppression, harm. Also, I think that Spain is a much more fearful empire in decline. I mean, it hasn't been an empire for much longer than the UK, and so there is this imperial heavy-handedness to Madrid that so far we haven't seen from London to the same degree.
Also, I think the prime minister okayed it and said, "Yeah, you guys are going to be independent." And I think what happened was Spain wasn't doing very good. In fact, they're bankrupt from investing in American mortgage loans. And with that bankruptcy, with those bankruptcies, and now you let the richest part of your country go, I don't think the EU is standing for that, and they actually put the hammer down on.
Well, I mean, I don't want to argue with you on your own show, but I think I just look into it. I don't think it was the EU. I think it was the Spanish government. Spanish federal police were the ones who were cracking skulls and stealing ballot boxes. So I don't think the EU was really involved. I mean, the interesting thing about the EU is that it doesn't really matter to the EU if the Catalans are part of Spain or not, right? Like whatever money the Catalans are paying into the EU, they'll pay in either way because they'll want to be part of the EU. Similarly with Scotland. And in that sense, what's interesting about the EU is it really creates this opportunity for independence for small nations that happen to currently live under the boot of another nation, because they can certainly survive.
Like Ukraine.
With I mean, Ukraine is not a small nation, but it was independent already, though it wasn't part of the EU and it's still not. But like Denmark, tiny country, Luxembourg, tiny country, Scotland, within the EU security umbrella would be perfectly safe and secure. So would Catalonia. So but anyway, let's move on to your next question.
Doesn't help us at all over here on the West Coast, right?
I think we're going to have to succeed on our own power for sure.
and I think we can as well. Here's my next question, Theo. Here we go. So, look, we've been doing this a number of years now, and we've talked to many hundreds and thousands of Californians. Some of them on board right away, some of them not sure, some of them absolutely not. Why do you think some Californians still align themselves with the United States, even though they have a net zero gain coming from the U.S. in their personal lives or even in their economic lives, professional lives? Why do you think they're still clamoring on to U.S. Kingdomhood or whatever, loyalty to the United States for what? I don't seem to get that with some Californians.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a few sources of that. There is freedom of movement. So people come and go from various states all the time. People have family in other states and issues like that. I mean, that hasn't really held me back, even though that's true for me as well. I think the real issue is cradle to grave propaganda. I think America has the greatest propaganda in the history of the world. And not just the greatest propaganda in the history of the world, it has several different channels of propaganda that even pretend to hate each other, but they're all pushing the same narrative. America's a beacon of freedom. America's wars are just. America's rule of the world is good for the world. And these are patently false things, right? Like if you talk to the Iraqis, if you talk to the Afghans, if you talk to the Yemeni, if you talk to the Libyans, if you talk to the Vietnamese, if you talk to the many places that America has bombed and destroyed because of some excuse, and usually for oil or for, similar kinds of geopolitical goals. But we have, like, it's the difference between your normal, sixth grade history class and Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. There's this fake narrative. There's the violence of organized forgetting, and then there's this propaganda about this absurd narrative about how these slave owners who like to do terrible things to their slaves were somehow, this great moment of freedom. And then, but that, slavery's in the Constitution, and America was created out of genocide and slavery and bigotry and misogyny and extreme racism. And it will never recover from any of that, right? It's still marked, it's still scarred by that, and it always will be. America will never be a beacon for freedom in the world because America was born out of slavery and genocide and war. And it is defined by extreme racism and war. I mean, it's known 16 years of peace in its entire history. America makes the Roman Empire look pacific.
Not funny. Agree on all points there, and much more, in fact. But it's your interview, so I can't disagree with you at all at any of those points. My nephews are they're 11 and 12. They don't know anything, and neither do most Americans know anything about January 6th,
sure,
which is a history maker. But if you ask the average man on the street, he'll know about the Revolutionary War, he'll know about the Civil War, but doesn't know about January 6th, man.
Sure.
And that's again the propaganda machine, keeping it down, keeping it quiet. The conditioning is unbelievable here in the U.S.
Right.
Absolutely right. And I just want to throw this in. I'm sick of the commercials on TV where it goes, they prop some soldier there, maybe he's maimed, maybe he's not, who fought for my rights apparently, and now wants something in return. I mean, I don't mind giving that guy something, but there's no way that he fought for my rights. And it's sure, that type of constant propaganda, I think, is what.
And he's a victim of propaganda, right? Like
absolutely.
anyone who hires on with the American military and goes overseas to murder a whole bunch of poor people. Yeah. I don't really blame them in the sense that I think they're a victim of American propaganda. Yeah. American propaganda is incredible. It is incredibly persuasive. Yeah. It is incredibly it's everywhere all the time, and it's not even recognized as propaganda. No. And that's its greatest strength, right? And this entire media system is owned by like 5 or 6 oligarch billionaires, and they craft this story about how anything America does is good, or if it's not good, it had to do it, or if it didn't have to do it, like on and on and on and on. And it's like there's think tanks, and there's this whole there's armies of Twitter bots, and it's this incredible force in the world. Just I don't the propaganda itself.
I recognize. I mean, the world sees the propaganda, our propaganda.
Yeah.
It's easily recognizable to everyone, but to people here,
yeah,
just blind.
Well, it's like we're fish swimming in the sea, and people are trying to tell us there's this water that we're swimming around in. And we're like, no, there's not. We just swim around. What are you talking about? I'm free. I think for myself. I'm not swept around by a bunch of water.
Right. I'm not in this bowl of water. I mean, there's water out there.
I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm just suspended in space. I don't want to go past the edge of that bowl because I don't want to.
That's fake news. That's fake
news. That's fake news that I'm a fish in a bowl.
Okay, man. Here's the next one here. This is on Newsom. Now, after his recall, I think he went through like this sudden change because he's just coming out with these haymakers. He's been screwing up too. He's been fucking up too. I'm not gonna come to that. He's screwed up a couple things, key things that pissed me off. But I will say, it is a complete 180 from before COVID and before the recall with the abortion rights, the sanctuary, the homelessness, the energy efficient car, the car mandate. So I mean, he's making some huge moves for the state. I can see that. What grade do you give Newsom?
The reason I would give him a C+ is that he shot down universal single payer healthcare. He threatened to veto it. It didn't even come to a vote. And I think that's a real great teachable moment about Democrats. Yeah. Because the Democrats in DC want us to believe that they want to do all these wonderful things. They want to give us all ponies, but the Republicans won't let them. And what we know in California, where the Democrats have been in complete control for 10 years, is that all that changes when you elect infinite Democrats is their excuses, right? So instead of the Republicans shooting down single-payer healthcare, instead of the Republicans making it so that every Californian can have healthcare, it's the Democrats making it so every Californian can have healthcare. It's the Democrats keeping us trapped in this bureaucratic nightmare. Yeah. The U.S. healthcare system, and by extension, the California healthcare system, is designed to kill us as expensively as possible for the profit of the ruling class. And that's why it's a Kafkaesque nightmare. And that's why everything costs way more than it should. And that's why we spend all our money on health insurance and then we can't afford healthcare. And Newsom is part of that system because he vetoed the bill that would have liberated us from it.
And in return for that bill, he gave us insulin, which is like pennies to what could really be done.
and look, I'm giving him a C+. You know, I think that he means well. Anyone who becomes the governor of a state in the United States is a corporate-owned, oligarch-owned stooge who has to be relatively pro-war, extremely pro-corporation, and very pro-rich people. And within that context, I think Newsom is mediocre to good, right? But he's still trapped in that gilded cage. He still cannot do anything that harms billionaires, that harms enormous corporations, that helps the people in any meaningful or permanent way. And that shows. Yeah. But look, I mean, you know, he's done some good. So yes, C+ for Newsom.
C+. Okay, good. I think I agree with that one too. My final question, Theo, the CNP. I understand we're doing a homeless voter drive. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a two-pronged thing. You know, we want to help homeless Californians, so we'll be looking at food and water. Just helping people get through their day. On the side of that, we're going to also be offering them the opportunity to register to vote. And I think that will be something that will help empower homeless people to actually hold their representatives accountable. An interesting thing about homeless people, and I've thought about how to try to leverage this with the homeless stakeholders, is if you had you were in a city, right, and you had a city council person who was super anti-homeless, a few months before that election, you could help a whole bunch of homeless people move into that district, register to vote, and then vote that person out of power. There's a way that homeless people could be, if they were coordinated, with their own best interests in mind. Ideally their own leadership, their own coordinated structures. They're driving this process, not me. You could really harness this power and change the political landscape
of politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Locally. That's brilliant, man. I can't wait. More to come on that. On Red Star, we'll first be talking about that drive for registering the homeless and, of course, helping the homeless as well. Theo, that's all I got time for you today, man. Thank you so much for joining. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Maybe what's the CNP? Why don't you plug the CNP web, Facebook, all that good stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So CaliforniaNational.party is the website. We're always looking for more people, and we've got a lot of exciting projects going on. We're doing a lot of community outreach. We're endorsing a lot of candidates. This is a great time to help us liberate the nation of California.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I love your show. I think what you and Hal are doing is amazing, and I look forward to being on it again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Theo. You have a great night. And folks, you guys have a wonderful night. Hal, back to you.
Thank you, Shankar. And thank you, California National Party External Communications Coordinator, Theo Slater. It's always a pleasure. You're always welcome. And we at Red Star Report hope we hear from you again real soon. As most of you may or may not know, the California National Party, since its founding in 2015, is without doubt the official party of the California independence movement. And we here at Red Star Report encourage everyone who is interested in our free and independent California, anyway, to go check out the California National Party website at californianational.party. That's California National, one word, .party. All right. Before we get to our final segment of the night, a new Red Star Rising with Matt Owen and his special guest, Sue Hirsch. It looks like I'm going to have to make a comment I never thought I'd ever have to make on Red Star Report. You see, part of Red Star Report's mission as the activist media group for the California independence movement is the promotion of California values. That's not a big surprise, because in the end, it is those California values that frame the question of the need for California's eventual independence from the United States in the first place. Simply put, California and the United States, with each passing year, see the world a bit differently and want different things. A nice way of saying we live in a badly divided United States, again, not much of a surprise. But even at that, I never thought I'd actually have to say these words in exactly this order. Not here, anyway. So, here goes. Anti-Semitism is not a California value. I mean, really, why would any Californian in the 21st century be involved in that anyway, right? It's like, dude, 1930s Germany called and Hitler wants his hate back? But I guess as disgusting as it is, we got to do this. Enter Petaluma, California resident John Minadeo, and I don't care if I'm mispronouncing this. Founder of the Goyim Defense League. Yeah. And Media Ego Project, Handsome Truth. For those of you who don't know this guy, he's proudly admitted to being the one stuffing anti-Semitic mailers in people's mailboxes and generally harassing non-Arian ideal people both in person and online up in Northern California. So here's a 60-second sample of this guy just to give you some idea. And yeah, I won't bother to invite you to enjoy because you won't.
Guy is f***ing up Europe, and he should be called out that your people are f***ing ruining Europe. Think that you can f*** over our nation? Huh? Why? You can f*** over Europe, but you won't go back to India. You should apologize for your people. Look at me. Look at me. You're an invader. You're an invader. Go home. Go home. Go home, invader. Leave. Bullshit. Invader, go home.
So, yeah, it actually exists. A California Nazi with apparently nothing better to do than spread anti-Semitism and hate as an attention-getting scheme. A human waste of time where an asshole like this has 100,000 internet followers and serious psycho-emotional issues. Dude was seriously not beaten enough as a child, but I'm sure the local Antifa group already knew where this guy lived anyway, right? Anyway, officials in Santa Rosa County are looking into this, and for one of many California independence movement thoughts on what could be done about this, let's go to Red Storm Rising with Matt Owen and special guest Sue Hirsch.
Hello, everyone. This is Red Star Rising. Today, it's rising over the city of Novato. So, why on earth would we come down to this cute little town right here? What brings us here, Sue?
Well, there have been incidences of people putting anti-Semitic flyers in other people's mailboxes. This is not a California value, folks. We don't go for this in California. It doesn't fly here. The reason it's concerning for me in particular is because I was born into Judaism. By heritage, I'm Jewish, but I don't want this for anybody. I don't want anybody to be hated here. Hate is just bad, to put it in its simplest terms. And people who go out spouting hate speech and putting hateful flyers in other people's mailboxes should not be allowed California citizenship. And once we have a nation of California the way we should have, and the way it always has been in all but name, then we will be able to revoke the citizenship of people who are performing these bigoted acts and acts of semi-violence to violence, and putting these hateful anti-Semitic flyers in other people's mailboxes, which is actually a federal offense. Only mail, actual stamped mail, is supposed to go in a mailbox, not flyers that proclaim your own personal agenda of hate, anti-Semitism, or whatever it is. This is not supposed to be happening. It's a crime, and people should be either jailed for it or in another state where that sort of crime is welcome. Should not be happening here in California. It's not a California value. No one in California wants for this to be happening. And so we're here today trying to claim California for Californians and for a nation of California. And we are in actuality a nation in all but name, and we have been for a very long time. And we once were in reality, we were once a Republic of California before we were illegitimately ceded to the United States by Mexico, but that's a whole other story, so I won't go into it. Just look back in your history, look up the Republic of California. We're there. We were once a nation, and we were supposed to still be a nation, but that's neither here nor there in this case. But it just goes to show that we can be again. We are the fifth largest economy in the world, not just in the nation, but in the world. And we could easily thrive on our own as a nation.
Okay, let me ask you one or two things.
Yes.
As long as we're part of the U.S., can we really do anything about this?
No, as long as we're part of the U.S., we can't come down on people who spout hate speech or on people who commit federal crimes like stuffing mailboxes with their hate speech. There's nothing we can do. The police won't do anything about it. We're right across from the police station, and somebody asked them about the hate-filled flyers, and they said there's nothing that they can really do about it, even though it's a federal offense.
Now, once we are an independent republic, independent of the United States, given that we were part of the U.S. until our independence, how many citizenships will a Californian have at that point?
If you become a national of California, you can keep any citizenship you already had. We will not ask you to revoke any citizenship that you previously had. You will simply be able to, if you want to, also have a California citizenship. And that will only be revoked if you start committing crimes against California citizens, like stuffing your hateful flyers into other people's mailboxes.
So everybody in California can have two citizenship.
Or three. Mexico, the U.S., and California.
But, everybody has the right not to be stateless, to have a citizenship. But do they necessarily have a right to two or three?
That is a privilege, actually. Your country can revoke your citizenship if you're bad, if you commit crimes.
Or even if their laws, like the U.S. laws, require you to revoke your previous citizenship to become a U.S. citizen, which obviously we won't.
The thing you can do is avoid U.S. taxes by trading up your U.S. citizenship for a California citizenship. Then you'll have somewhat less to pay in taxes. You'll get to keep more of your own hard-earned dollars in your own pocket. And if you spend them locally, that's even better, because that will keep all the taxes from the shopkeepers and the stores you visit locally here in California, so that we can repair our own streets, we can house our own homeless people, we can educate our own students, and things will just get better and better and better.
So, yes, and be very attractive to a lot of immigrants, which actually we want to help build our republic, unless they come with a fascist agenda. Like these fascists that were doing this anti-Semitic stuff, they would have dual citizenship. Which means if we revoke California citizenship, they're not stateless. If they're U.S. citizens, we could simply deport them to the U.S.
Exactly, other than within California borders. You just live somewhere else in the U.S.
Right, you could live in the U.S., and here we are in California, and waving bye-bye.
If you don't like Jewish people, then it's on you to go find a place to live where you're not going to be around Jewish people. It's not the responsibility of Jewish people to make you comfortable so that you keep living here near them.
Right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Sue.
You're so welcome.
Viva Gran California.
Viva Gran California from here in Nevada, the city of Novato in Marin County.
That was Red Storm Rising with Matt Owen and special guest Sue Hirsch. And just so we're clear, Red Star Report is not a maker of policy for the California independence movement. We tend to leave policy and political platform to the California National Party and to policy groups like the Independent California Institute or the California Freedom Coalition. But I think it's a pretty safe bet that I can speak for all of us in the California independence movement when I say that if a free and independent California isn't going to reflect California's cultural diversity, then what's the point of independence in the first place? If all we're going to do is import America's history of racism and intolerance, then we might as well just stay in the USA. We are Red Star Report. Okay, Red Star Report is done for this week. For more Red Star Report information, check out our website at redstarreport.com. Go subscribe to our Red Star Report YouTube channel. You know, where this video is. Please, could use help. Tell your friends. Go to our Red Star Report Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, and give us a like and give us a follow. Because if you want to support the real California Independence Movement's media group, it's all about the algorithms. Our thanks to you and all our Red Star Rebels for watching. We are Red Star Report.